The Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross. Translated and edited by E. Allison Piers. Book 2, Chapter 24. Completes the explanation of the second stanza. My house being now at rest. This is as much as to say, the higher portion of my soul, being like the lower part also, at rest with respect to its desires and faculties, I went forth to the divine union of the love of God. Inasmuch as, by means of that war of the dark night, as has been said, the soul is combated and purged after two manners, namely, according to its sensual and its spiritual part, with its senses, faculties, and passions, so likewise after two manners, namely, according to these two parts, the sensual and the spiritual, with all its faculties and desires, the soul attains to an enjoyment of peace and rest. For this reason, as has likewise been said, the soul twice pronounces this line, namely, in this stanza and in the last, because of these two portions of the soul, the spiritual and the sensual, which in order that they may go forth to the divine union of love, must needs first be reformed, ordered, and tranquilized with respect to the sensual and to the spiritual, according to the nature of the state of innocence which was Adam's. And thus, this line, which in the first stanza was understood of the repose of the lower and sensual portion, is in this second stanza understood more particularly of the higher and spiritual part, for which reason it is repeated. This repose and quiet of this spiritual house the soul comes to attain habitually and perfectly, in so far as the condition of this life allows, by means of the acts of the substantial touches of divine union, whereof we have just spoken, which, in concealment and hidden from the perturbation of the devil and of its own senses and passions, the soul has been receiving from the divinity, wherein it has been purifying itself, as I say, resting, strengthening, and confirming itself, in order to be able to receive the said union once and for all, which is the divine betrothal between the soul and the Son of God. As soon as these two houses of the soul have together become tranquilized and strengthened, with all their domestics, namely, the faculties and desires, and have put their domestics to sleep and made them to be silent with respect to all things, both above and below, this divine wisdom immediately unites itself with the soul by making a new bond of loving possession, and there is fulfilled that which is written in the Book of Wisdom in these words, Dum quietum silentium contineret omnia, et nox in suo cursu medium iter haberet, omnipotens sermo tuus Domine a regalibus sedibus. For when all things were in quiet silence, and the night was in the midst of her course, your almighty word leapt down from heaven from your royal throne. The same thing is described by the bride in the songs, where she says that after she had passed by those who stripped her of her mantle by night and wounded her, she found him whom her soul loved. The soul cannot come to this union without great purity, and this purity is not gained without great detachment from every created thing and sharp mortification. This is signified by the stripping of the bride of her mantle, and by her being wounded by night, as she sought and went after the spouse. For the new mantle, which belonged to the betrothal, could not be put on until the old mantle was stripped off. Wherefore, he that refuses to go forth in the night aforementioned, to seek the beloved, and to be stripped of his own will, and to be mortified, but seeks him upon his bed, and at his own convenience, as did the bride, will not succeed in finding him. For this soul says of itself that it found him by going forth in the dark, and with yearnings of love. Chapter 25, wherein is expounded the third stanza. In the happy night, in secret, when none saw me, nor I beheld anything, without light or guide, save that which burned in my heart. Exposition. The soul still continues the metaphor and similitude of temporal night in describing this, its spiritual night, and continues to sing and extol the good properties which belong to it, and which, in passing through this night, it found and used, to the end that it might attain its desired goal with speed and security. Of these properties it here sets down 3. The first, it says, is that in this happy night of contemplation, God leads the soul by a manner of contemplation so solitary and secret, so remote and far distant from sense, that nothing pertaining to it, nor any touch of created things, succeeds in approaching the soul in such a way as to disturb it and detain it on the road of the union of love. The second property whereof it speaks pertains to the spiritual darkness of this night, wherein all the faculties of the higher part of the soul are in darkness. The soul sees nothing, neither looks at anything, neither stays in anything that is not God, to the end that it may reach Him, inasmuch as it journeys unimpeded by obstacles of forms and figures, and of natural apprehensions, which are those that are wont to hinder the soul when uniting with the eternal being of God. The third is that, although as it journeys it is supported by no particular interior light of understanding, nor by any exterior guide, that it may receive satisfaction from it on this lofty road, it is completely deprived of all this by this thick darkness. Yet its love alone, which burns at this time and makes its heart to long for the beloved, is that which now moves and guides it, and makes it to soar upward to its God along the road of solitude, without its knowing how or in what manner. There follows the line, in the happy night. End of chapter 25. End of the dark night of the soul.